Dear participants, thank you very much for joining today's FRH talk. Today's talk is part of the three-part series of Religious Heritage at Risk, Saving Our Cultural Treasures. So today is about the Arakelots Monastery. It was one of the shortlisted sites for the 7 Most Endangered Award of this year, the 7 Most Endangered program. And this is just to highlight the relevant and very urgent need that many sites, religious heritage sites across Europe have. And especially this monastery is clearly one of them. And we're delighted to welcome today Jasmine Dum-Tragut, who's an associate professor of Armenian Studies and Linguistics. She's also heading the department Interdisciplinary Armenian Cultural Heritage Studies. She's worked more than 30 years with Armenian heritage. She's an expert also with biblical studies, church history. She's done interdisciplinary research on Armenian cultural heritage, tangible and intangible, female monastic culture in southern Armenian Karabakh. So she's clearly the expert of the Near East and the Caucasus region. So we're very happy to have her and learn more about the Arakelots Monastery. So please, Jasmine, you may begin. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and good evening to you all from Yerevan. I just arrived today, so it's my first day now, the first time this year that I'm in Armenia. Well, I'm going to talk today about Arakelots Monastery and Settlement. First of all, I would like to explain to you what Arakelots means. It means apostles. So it's the monastery and the settlement named after the apostles. If we talk about Arakelots, there are a lot of things I could tell you, but we still don't have too much time, so I can just give you an overview of the history, of the historical value, of the cultural value, of the religious value of this settlement. Of course, I'm not concentrating only on the monastic complex, on the churches, but I'm concentrating on the whole settlement. And I do not like to divide the monastic complex from the settlement because it belongs to each other. And here, this is very important for Armenia. We can study a monastic complex together with its surrounding settlement, with its village. And we can study and understand, try to understand the relation between the monastic settlement, the rulers of this period, we are talking about medieval period, and of course the settlement. This region especially is quite interesting because it's in the northern part of Armenia. I will just show you in a minute. And this region is a region where a lot of people met in history. So it's a region where Armenians used to meet with Georgians, with other people, of course, during medieval periods, also with Mongols, with Seljuks, with people who crossed this area. And actually, that's why the settlement became so important, because here in this forest zone, you have no agriculture, you have just forestry. And how come that this village became so important? I would like to talk about this. Well, first of all, where is it? The site is located in the very northern part of Armenia, as you can see from the small map, in a border zone with Azerbaijan. It is a little bit west of the village called Acharkut, about 2 to 4 kilometers, depending on the part of the settlement. And it's following a river. The river is called Kirans. And of course, this river was most important in history because where can you have good settlements along the river? The area, as I told you, is forest area, and it has been like this for centuries, which means the settlement was established because of its rule at the river and because it's combining some roads there, some important roads. And actually, we think, and all the settlement monuments talk about it or prove it, that Arakelots used to be a very important village on the northern part of the Armenian Silk Roads. So let's just show you the cemetery. This wonderful. So what you can see here now is, of course, the dense forest area. The main point you can see from the whole settlement is, of course, the main church, because the church, the monastic complex, is on the rock, and the settlement is around it. So the settlement has three districts: a southern, a western, and an eastern. And the eastern district is more or less covered by the monastic complex on the rock. The monastic complex is covering the whole rock. It consists of this main church, which is rather well preserved with a wonderful narthex, and it has rampart walls and watchtowers, and it has other structures I can show you later on a plan. But you can imagine that it's quite difficult to find here the other monuments to work here because nothing can be seen. So what is Arakelots? So what we try to do with our group to find out the main monuments we have. These are not all the monuments we have in the settlement, but the most important. So here you can see the map, you can see the river, and you can see this forest road. And in this small part here in the middle, you can see the monastery here with the monastic church. So this is the rock, and here you have a small field where you have a little bit of arable land. And rightly here, of course, there is the caravanserai because there was place for the animals and it's close to the river, and the mill because this was also very important for the river. Then we have the wonderful medieval bridge and the other part of the settlement. In general, we have the monastic complex with several buildings, and in the settlement we have also various buildings, but also parts of cemeteries and typical Armenian cross stones. And so the whole group we have together now are 21 monuments we are talking about. So it's not just one church, we have 21 monuments to study. Perhaps a little bit back in time. So when was Arakelots established? When was it built? So we do not have so many sources about it. Of course, there must be some archaeological surveys to fill this gap. So I was just working on manuscript and archival sources. But what we know from history that after the Seljuk invasion and the part of Armenia was destroyed, the Georgians took over to reign in this northern part of Armenia. So we are almost here. About here is Arakelots. So, and you can see it used to be a part of Georgia, of the Georgian Empire, but it was ruled by Georgian Armenian families. So there were two families quite famous, the Sakaryan and the Orbelian, which later became very important princes, also in the southern part of Armenia. And we had a family which was called Atsruni. And this Atsruni family, they were also had very high position in the Georgian kingdom, but were also related to the Mongols. And they were also on friendly terms with the Western kingdom of Cilician Armenia. And we have two princes, two rulers that are given in the inscriptions we have there. So one is Sadun Atsuni, and the other one is his very famous son, Hutlubucha, who was very important here, perhaps for the building of the monastic complex or for adding monuments to the monastic complex. This all we can date to the second half of the 13th century. So most of the monuments we have some dated monuments. The oldest monument we have dated is 1267. It's cross stone with an inscription, and then we have some church inscriptions and other tombstones and cross stones who give us more about the history. And as I said, we have some news in colophons of manuscripts which were written in this area. So just a few pictures so that you can see what we have. First of all, the monastic complex. You can see here, this is on this platform, on this rock, and it was completely fortified. So main parts of this rampart wall are still existing. They are just overgrown. The best part is the northern part, which is also directly the northern wall of the church and the narthex. And we have here these watchtowers. It's pretty well preserved. And in the church, this is the main part here. We have the main church here. And this is this wonderful narthex, which is also quite well preserved. And then we have these other buildings. So we have a small church and a refectory and an entrance hall. And we used to have some entrances. So the main entrance was from the south, and the main entrance to the village was from here. Because there we had a spring then, and the main part of the settlement was west of the monastery. Sorry. Yeah, regarding the settlement, the most prominent part of the settlement is perhaps the bridge, because it's really, it's a wonderful situated, located, it's a wonderful medieval bridge. And then we have a lot of various buildings. The most impressive and completely understudied building is the Caravanserai, which is a huge building which is just broken in the northeastern part. The other part is quite well preserved. We have a small church, which is almost not existing anymore, but the eastern part and the southern wall has a wonderful fresco. Then we have the church, which is called the Tevavo Church, which is the only place of pilgrimage in the settlement, because the people don't know about it any longer. And this has to do also with this wonderful cross stone, which is a rather rare cross stone for the Armenian culture. It's a so-called wing cross stone. And we have a lot of cross stones just lying around, covered all kinds of plants and trees. So we just have to unearth them. And we have a very interesting building, which is called the guardhouse. So this is perhaps the house where they were paying for toll or for taxes to stay there in the workshops or in the caravanserai of Arakelots. And this is a rather interesting building because it reminds us a little bit of Islamic architecture. So we have here also very interesting features. That's why Arakelots, when we ask why Arakelots, why did I think about nominating Arakelots? First of all, it's historical value. It's very important for the whole region because of its position here at the border zone, and because also in religious terms, it remained Armenian Apostolic, because during the 13th century, some of the churches in this region became Orthodox because of the Georgian rulers. But this church is really a real Armenian Apostolic church, which is very beautifully evidenced by the, unfortunately, not well preserved fresco showing one of the most important Armenian saints, Subsarkis. You can see it here. And it's also a place we know of pilgrimage, and it is a place, I think some relics were kept. We don't know about it now. We have a very beautiful cross stone with wonderful carving. And I think if you talk then about the artistic value, except from this wonderful, also in the settlement, this wonderful brick laying, this wonderful carving, stone carvings. One of the most impressive artistic and architectural feature is, of course, the light here, the roof of the narthex of the monastery, which is built in a very specific construction, which is called Hasarashen, which means thousands of layers. So this is a very interesting type of construction which is usually not used in church buildings, but in village architecture. As I told you, it's the geographical location, the importance of the church mainly here, which is also, you can see here another church which is also on the territory of Arkelots, of the village of Arkelots, which is called Kirans. And this is, you can see perhaps some difference. This is an Orthodox church. This is a church in Byzantine style, yeah? So it different building, different, the inscriptions are in Georgian and in Greek. So, and this is just a few kilometers away. So the border between what was Georgian Christianity and was Armenian Christianity is directly going on the borders of the settlement. What is also quite important now in the last years is that Arakelots Monastery and Archakud is very close to the Azerbaijani border. It's about 2 kilometers away from the Azerbaijani border. And you know from the history from the last years that we still have this conflict. We still do not have any peace treaty between those two republics. And it was just last year that part of this border was moved. So a part came back to Azerbaijan, especially here, and we had a lot of fights again. And this changing of the border led to the decision that a new road must be built, and this new road goes exactly through the village of Archakud. You can see it on this map. And this opens new possibilities for Arakelots because now people can go, because there's a good road now leading to the village, and we can open it a little bit more for ecotourism. We can help the people there to develop, to care for the heritage, because it's an important heritage in this area where various religions and cultures meet. But there are other reasons why Arakelots is threatened, and there are nature-made threats and man-made threats. So one of the main threats, as in many places in Armenia, is that Armenia has a lot of faults, and actually Arakelots is exactly on this Bambak-Sevak unique fault, which you can see here in the northern part. And actually, if you look at the monastery and some of the walls of the monastic building, you can see a lot of cracks already from the earthquakes, mainly from the 19th century. Then, of course, everywhere we have climate change, and this is quite important here for Arakelots, which is, of course, forest, but which is also increasing in humidity, which is not good, of course, for the stone which is used here, because mainly it's volcanic stone, it's tufa, and you know tufa has a lot of problems with humidity, so it decays from humidity. Then, of course, we have too much rain, we have too much growing plants, and of course we have mud slides. So actually 2 churches are filled with mud from the last slides last year and 2 years ago. And this is really a problem we have to face, because the river also, if it's too much rain, the river is also quite difficult. And then we have another very interesting fact, that the monastery is inhabited by colonies of bats. And actually 2 buildings you cannot enter because of these bats. You cannot even come closer because the smell is so horrible, you cannot come closer. So I never entered 2 churches because there are hundreds of beds in it. So this is also a kind of challenge we have to, what can we do to find this balance between nature and animals and keeping the heritage. So what can we do with these beds to keep the heritage? And of course, as I told you, man-made, of course, the long conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and what you see there, you can see the military posts, and it's not always, now that the road, we have the new road, it's better, but before that you had to cross Azerbaijani territory to enter, and that was quite a problem. And then of course we have the village people and the lack of knowledge about their history, about their heritage. the ignorance they have. And a problem we have all over Armenia is uncontrolled picnic areas and a lot of littering and a lot of pollution. So a lot of things just must be cleaned here. And there's also, unfortunately, a lack in organized cultural property protection or heritage protection. So most of the sites are registered by state, but this has happened about 20 years ago. So in the last 20 years, nobody has really cared about it, what is going on. So they have taken it, they have taken the passports of some monuments and have just left them. Meanwhile, some have overgrown, some have fallen down, and so on, unfortunately. So how can we try to save Arakelots? Of course, there are a lot of things to do. First of all, it must be researched. It's under study, and we have to research it holistically by, as I said, researching the monastic complex and the settlement together, the various parts of the settlement, and of course, a kind of inclusive research. This is always important to cooperate with the village people and with the local people about their knowledge, about their traditions they have, about their pilgrimage places, about the names they give to the places, this what we call micro-toponyms they give to these places. This is of utmost importance. Then, of course, cleaning and caring, cleaning from litter, but also cleaning, and this, of course, must be controlled also with with nature preservation, cutting bushes, trees, and so on and so on. And then once this is done, we can start to have a look for conservation work and protection. We do not have plans for renovation. We have plans for conservation, for stabilization. And of course, for cleaning also, you've seen there are a lot of graffitis inside. This is also a problem, whatever we can do. What is of utmost importance is to raise awareness and appreciation among the local people, among the village people, but also on national level, which means in Armenia and also on international level. We have started with educational programs, which means in the region. So the village school has only 7 children. So we are done with the 7 kids, but we are trying to teach the region at all. We have programs with the local universities. We have autumn schools we are organizing and also teaching youth and trying to do some capacity building with students of Armenian studies and of tourism. Yeah. Talking about tourism, one of the plans is, of course, to have here some ecotourism, especially some hiking trails, because this is a wonderful region and the paths are not dangerous. It's not like the south of Armenia where I'm working too, where we have a lot of dangerous places, but here it's quite nice. It's easy to walk. We just have to care, just have to make the path, because at the moment nobody finds these monuments because they're midst of the forest. And of course, with all this together, we would like to do everything to keep the village people there. So there are about 230 people living there, to keep them there, to give them some perspectives for the future, to have some income with tourism, to know more about their heritage, and also to have a kind of example for other monasteries in the region. So whom are we working with, or who am I working with? So first of all, it's my team. We did this preparatory work in 2024, which was then, let's say, the impulse for the nomination, for my nomination. And we are based in the Institute of Archaeology and Ethnography of the Armenian Academy of Sciences. And I personally, being an Austrian, I'm also cooperating with the Austrian Center for Cultural Property Protection at the University of Krems and with various NGOs regarding cultural property protection. Of course, we are cooperating with all local stakeholders, with ministries. We are on good terms with the Ministry of Culture, with the Ministry of Infrastructure, which is extremely important for helping us in making the roads, the path, and so on, to get people for the forest works there and so on. And of course, we have also good relations to the church people there, because also who does it belong to, and so we have to be on terms with all these people. And of course we would like to gather other specialists, especially then when we come to study the preservation, to bring people also from Austria, from other countries, from Europe, to Armenia for perhaps the restoration or the fixation of the frescoes we have in two churches, or some fixation work for the earthquake cracks. For me and for Arakelots and for the people of Arjakut, it was immensely important to be shortlisted. We had an unusual big, high press impact and a very high media outlet. It was incredible, not only in Armenia and Austria, Germany, but also in the US. Of course, Armenians, as we say, are everywhere, in Russia, in Turkey. Very many articles. I gave very many interviews to local TV stations, to Austrian TV stations. And the first point I always wanted to have, to raise awareness, to show people what do we have here in the forests of Armenia, what kind of medieval historic evidence we have here, and what is just here hidden in the forest. It was so important, and I think this was one of the most important things we did in the last weeks, to show we are in the border region. The people don't know what to do, they have problems, but they have here such wonderful places. And all our plans, of course, we have a lot of plans, and what we like to have, not only, of course, we start with Arakelots because it's a huge example and it will be a good example, but of course we would like to cover the whole border region here with the other villages, with the other monasteries and settlements, to develop sustainable ecotourism, to involve the people here in ecotourism, to involve them not only for heritage conservation, but also for nature conservation. So it's important for them to learn to understand the nature, to learn to understand the heritage. And of course, talking about border zone, I think it would be of utmost importance also to try everything to have these monastery registered under the Hague Convention, because actually in Armenia we have just one place which is registered under the Hague Convention, and this is midst of Armenia. So this would also be another example. And we hope that with all this, we can give a little bit of stability to this region, and a little bit of a hope to this region and peace. Because we cannot divide the people from the heritage, and though they do not know a lot, they become interested when we go there, and they become interested to say, okay, let's try to find something. And they start to follow us and to watch us, and especially the young people, they're very much interested and they're very enthusiastic in helping us to take away the legend, or to take away all these plans, to see more, to see the inscriptions, to read the inscriptions together. So this is also part of our plans, to do this volunteer work with young people, and also to convince stakeholders and decision makers about the importance of this almost unknown and completely understudied monument site. And I think looking out to Europe, Europe doesn't know much about Armenia or the Armenian cultural heritage. So Europe knows Armenia used to be the first Christian country of the world, and they have a very ancient Christian traditions, and they have very ancient Christian churches going back to the 5th, 6th century. And the tradition and the folk tradition and what we call the intangible heritage is very much close to these monuments, and it's very important to show this, to bring this together, to have this holistic approach, to have this inclusive approach, to show Europe what does it mean to have Armenian heritage, and also to show them, and this is also extremely important with Arakelots, because it used to be on the northern part of the Silk Road, that Armenia, especially with its very hybrid culture, at the crossroads between Europe and Asia and the Caucasus, it has a very unique culture, and this unique culture is not just the culture of the Armenians, it's the culture of the Europeans, and it's the culture of humanity at all. And we have to give them their values. We have to help them to understand their values, because first of all, the Armenians themselves have to understand their values, and only by understanding they will appreciate it. And as we know, only by appreciating they will start to preserve it and to protect it. And if we can do it from outside, we can help them, we can show them Europe is at your side, and Europe will like to help you, and it's a European who nominated this site and not of Armenian origin. Maybe this will help a lot. And I think it's not just a statement of solidarity with the Armenian culture, which has really seen a lot of very difficult years and is still faced with the destruction of its culture in Artsakh. I think it might be not only, as I said, a statement of solidarity, but it's also a very important sign of giving them some hope for the future and giving them some strength to protect their own heritage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jasmine, for this very inspiring presentation. I think you raised very, very interesting points. Congratulations for the work you're doing. I hope it gains a lot more interest and it raises awareness. And yeah, it's wonderful indeed to involve the local communities so they're proud of what they have. It's curious that often somebody from outside needs to come and remind you of what amazing wealth you have just around you. From very, typical cases like the pyramids, that somebody came and said, oh, you have this, and the locals might not know. But of course, in Armenia, it's still very much part of their current identity, right? It's still the Armenian church. It's part of their cultural heritage. So I think it's very important, the work you're doing, and thanks so much for sharing this. So yes, now we can open the floor for comments, questions, suggestions, ideas. Feel free.
I will switch off the screen, so
yes. Indeed. Perfect. So feel free to just step in or raise your hand, whatever you prefer.
Okay.
Don't see anything at the moment.
I cannot switch it off. No, I don't know what happened.
Okay. And I saw in this presentation these amazing chakars, these stone crosses, Armenian stone crosses. These are, of course, one thing I think worldwide that are very well known. These we have one here in Brussels actually that the Armenian government gifted to the Belgian government. So it's
yeah,
and yeah, they're extraordinary. Sometimes these knots remind you of these Celtic crosses as well, stone crosses, but it's completely different parts of Europe. Well, of larger extended Europe, let's say. But yeah, fascinating. Also UNESCO Intangible World Heritage.
Yes, you're right.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean the cross stones, these are very often of major importance to the village people. So very often not the churches are the places of pilgrimage, or the churches are not the holy places where people go, because after Soviet period it was very hard for them. But these cross stones, they have their special power. We have a lot of healing cross stones. So they believe if you go to pray there, so you will be healed from, I don't know what, from all kinds of diseases. And cross stones are blessed. So it's not just a stone. So there is an own tradition in having it blessed and there's a kind of ritual for it. So it is very important part of the Armenian culture, of the Christian culture. And usually, I don't know how many we have in Arakelots, because we're still finding some. Because sometimes you just walk and you see kind of slab lying there. And I said, okay, let's try to clean a bit. Perhaps it's the tombstone or it's a cross stone. And very often you just have to take it and then see if it's a cross stone. So there are just a lot, still some lying around, especially close to the churches.
So I just see in the chat, thank you for the interesting, inspiring presentation. Yes. So any questions, comments, feel free.
Can I ask?
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, now.
First of all, thank you so much for the presentation. And I was curious about the educational programs you mentioned and volunteering. If you can explain a bit more, what sort of activities do you organize, and the profile of the people who participate in it, and perhaps if you do these activities in collaboration, I don't know, with the local government or with the tourism sector.
So in education, we just started last year. So it was just like that. I'm organizing every year a so-called Cultural Heritage Autumn School for students. So last year we organized it here in the region of Tavush, and we went to these places with students to make them acquainted with the heritage, but also to work there, to do some cleaning stuff. And this year we will do the same. So this is very important. So this is students from the university in various fields of studies, history, language, arts, whatever they like. This is volunteer, so they, of course, it's like a real university school, so they have some work to do and they get the degree after it, they get their certificate. And usually I also bring students from Austria with us, so it's a kind of international, or at least Austrian Armenian. So this is more or less in youth or students. The other educational program with the kids, as I said, there are just 7 kids in school in Tragut, but what we try to do is to go with them to at least to the monastery, or to tell them a few things. No, just to some kind of excursions with the school kids, to show them the most important, because even the people there, they just see the buildings. I said, what do you think this building is? And for them, everything is a church. No, if you go to the oil mill, they say it's a church. If you go to Caravanserai, they say it's a church. If you go to the bathhouse, they say it's a church. And then I'll try to say, listen, what do you think? What do we see here? What kind of walls and so on? Or we do what is more important for me, to go with the young people, not only students, but also young people, to make some excursions and to go with them and tell them, so what do you think about what is wrong here? So about littering or garbage, or what do they say about the graffiti? Or what do they say about burning candles directly on the wall? You have seen perhaps a few of the walls were completely blackened. So to give them a feeling. So, for example, there were some young people, oh, this graffiti. I said, yeah, but listen, if I come to your house as a guest, do you want me to write on your wall, I was here? Would your mom like this? I said, no. I said, so why do you do it on the church wall? Why do you do it on the fresco? Okay, such things. And then I have done some I've produced some games, very simple card games and memories with pictures of Arakelots and all kinds of games with photographs of Arakelots, just to make them acquainted, because mostly they know, of course, the monastery and the bridge. So these two things you can see. But even in the monastic complex, because of the bats, nowhere goes there because they're all afraid, no, and because of the smell, you cannot even come close. And the other buildings, they don't know at all, because there are no paths leading to these buildings and costumes. So what we like to do then is to continue with some smaller publication in Armenian, of course, just to give some kinds of brochures, booklets for the regional people, also in the regional capital, which is Ijevan. It's about half an hour from Artakut by car, and also giving more information about what you have there. And this will also be then starting with the people who are working in tourism. Because, as I said, now nobody will find the things, just 2 or 3, perhaps because they're close to the forest road, but the others they won't find. So we have to start slowly. Once we clean, we have to make some baths, of course, because we need them also. And then we can also start slowly to do this kind of work, because people will come. First of all, Armenians will come, people from the other villages will come, and we are also planning, I will go on Saturday to have a meeting with the governor of the province and with the mayor of the village, and we would like to organize a concert in May, June there, an open air concert in a monastery. And we're just talking about what can we do. So a kind of raising awareness and bringing people to this side and to show them around, to explain things like this.
I don't see any hand raised. I just had another question. You mentioned that the government listed some of the sites. So is there a national registry of all the religious
Yes.
heritage sites in Armenia?
Yes.
So there is one comprehensive registry at the moment?
Yeah, there's one comprehensive registry, and of course, most of the monuments are registered. So each monument has its number and its passport. But unfortunately, because this was done long ago, as I said, more than 20 years, and nobody has controlled it again. So, and of course, 25 years ago, a lot of information was not given. So, for example, we very often found that they just wrote there is an inscription, but they didn't try to read the inscription. Or yeah, no, with GPS, there are no coordinates. They just say, okay, this is located 100 meters to the west from a building, and then you run around, say 100 meter, what 100 meter means. Yeah, so it's a little bit difficult, but not all of the things we have are registered, because we found some new things, of course. Which is always happening in Armenia, because I'm working in various villages, and we found a lot of new monuments in these villages, mainly in the forests, because people don't know that they have something there, and they just see some stones and they don't think that these are parts of buildings or of cemeteries or whatever. So just when there is a kind of carving or inscription on it. So, but they are registered, and of course, since they are registered, they belong to the state.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And for the buildings that are still in use, is there then a concerted effort to maintain them, restore them?
So no, in general, it's also a state forest, so there are no private owners. This may happen that you have some private owners if a part of the area is belonging to private owners, but not here in the forest zone. There's just one place, one of the picnic places is officially the owner, but this is one of the best because it's really caring for the place there. So. But the problem was that in the villages, and this also happens very often in Armenia, when the village was abandoned, this was about in the 16th, 17th century, the people took a lot of things with them. They just took stones with them. They took the bricks with them to build up the new village. So, and people continued like this. So whenever they needed cut stones, they went to this old place and took the stones with them to the new village. So that's a little bit complicated. That's why we have some of the main buildings just in the walls, maybe 1 meter. Not so much in the churches because churches are sacred, but in the other buildings they didn't know, so they just took some stones, or sometimes they even take the cross stones with them out of the forest, because they say it will be safer if it's not in the forest, especially here in the border region. But of course, it's difficult then if you don't, especially if they do not know anymore where they took them from. This is a problem, because cross stones are also like markers of streets or of very important places. That's why we need to know where they took it from, but very often they don't remember it.
Mm-hmm. Any questions, comments? Does anyone else want to share anything?
Hello.
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, hello. It was a very interesting presentation. And my question is, how long is this monastery empty, uninhabited?
You see, as I told you, the village was abandoned in the 15th or 16th century, and it seems that the monastery was a little bit longer, but as it is in general in Armenia, most of the monasteries were closed or abandoned in the 19th century. So we don't have, and this is also very important, we don't have any working church in the whole region. So this village, the younger village, which was then built in the 7th century, which was called Hinkunen, also has some 3 or 4 churches. None of these churches is working. So there is no priest there, and there are no liturgies there, and so on. This is also a kind of thing we like to recultivate, at least for pilgrimage, or at least for some days, for the day of the Saint Sarkis, because it's we have his fresco here. But so in this region, we do not have this church tradition anymore. We have folk religion and Christian traditions, but not so much related to the monastic building there.
Thank you.
Yes, Heikki, I see you have your hand raised. Please go ahead.
Oh, yes. Do you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Hi, everybody. Hello. You mentioned the blue shielding, the Hague Convention of the blue shields. And you did I understand right? There is only one blue shielded item or object in the whole country of Armenia. What is the reason they don't want to have more blue shields in that country? Is it a political reason, or is it just lousiness, or?
It's all together. It's just
Okay. Can you just tell me something, because I just went a week ago to Lithuania. I live in Sweden, but I went to Lithuania, and in the capital of Lithuania, in Vilnius, I think every 3rd building was blue shielded. So there were a lot of blue shielded objects, and now you come with a country that only has one.
You see, one of the reasons was that there was no blue shield. It was just blue shield was just registered last year. So I'm one of the founding members of Blue Shield Armenia, and so there was nobody who really cared for these questions. And now we have Blue Shield Armenia, and we can make them work. And of course, they had other problems. They didn't care so much. I have to say, there's also, unfortunately, I have to say, there is no real concept of heritage protection, of heritage preservation in Armenia, unfortunately. So they have these very famous monastic centers, which are also UNESCO World Heritage. But even if you go there, you don't think that they're really well preserved. No, it's very difficult.
That's pretty amazing, isn't it? Because all these countries after 1990s, when they got their independence around the old Soviet or the old parts of the Soviet system. So in those countries, the national consciousness about their own identity, etc., is really much well reflecting to the heritage, isn't it?
Yeah,
So it's
absolutely.
amazing that in this country, I mean Armenia, which is known to be the very early place for the whole Christianity, you don't have this kind
No,
of
you see, a lot of things get registered and a lot of things are registered.
yeah.
But very often you have the feeling it's registered and that's it.
Okay, so they think that this is enough then.
So that's quite difficult here. And there are too many places like Arakelots in all of Armenia. So
Yeah.
and you see, the problem is also, I have to say, the last years they were very problematic for Armenia for economical reasons, and the people they do not have that that strength now to care about their heritage, no, because it was the daily life they had to carry. Man, the war is just 4.5 years ago, so they had these problems with the people coming in from Karabakh. So and now, as you know, they have the problem with their heritage in Karabakh, which is under destruction partly. So it's very difficult. They're in very difficult situation, and of course, whatever we try to do also with Blue Shield, and having now Blue Shield in Armenia helps it, because we are now cooperating with the other Blue Shield national, mainly with Austria, of course, because it was me who was more or less a kind of impulse here, and then that makes it easier. But very often you have to force the government to do things. You have to force the people there to work. They know they have a lot to do, but you have to find, as everywhere, to find the right persons.
Yeah, I understand that. Thank you for your presentation. It really was inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any more hands raised. No. Well, then thank you so much, Jasmine, for this wonderful
Thank you,
presentation.
all of you.
It was extremely interesting. And if you agree, maybe I can share your contact details in case anybody would like to learn more or wants to collaborate in some way.
And thank you very much for inviting me also. And let's hold our fingers crossed for all 3 of our projects presented in this series, because as you know, very soon there will be the decision. And yeah, let's hope for it. Because I think for all of us, also for the wonderful church that you presented and for the synagogue in Poland, I think it would be so important. And they are so different from each other. This is also quite important, no?
Yeah, indeed. Well, thank you all, participants. Thank you very much, Jasmine, and see you next time.
See you next time. Bye-bye.